Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Hogaak Vine, which is the deck that has been taking over Modern recently. So we're going to take it for a spin. Still learning a lot of the ropes with the deck, so feel free to let me know if I've missed any interactions or any interesting points here. But yeah, I've taken the deck for a first spin, and there is quite a lot to learn in terms of the interactions with the deck. Quite an interesting deck in general. So let's get things underway. So we're playing against Slivers here, which is a deck that has also seen quite a boost from Modern Horizons, but possibly not quite as much as this deck, which has become pretty insane, and people are already calling for a ban for this deck, which actually seems justified in these circumstances. So this is our opening hand. It's not completely insane by the standards of this deck, but we do have Faithless Looting to pitch Vengevine, and then we can Carrion Feeder, Neonate, get back Vengevine. So not a completely degenerate hand by the standards of this deck, but still fairly good. I guess Godless Shrine, plays a Vial. So yeah, not entirely sure what our opponent was doing at this point in time. Godless Shrine is certainly not a land that you usually associate with Vial decks. So we're going to looting here, see what we get. Find a Bloodstained Mire and a Bloodghast. Apologies, there appears to be an aeroplane going overhead. So we're going to pitch the Ghast and the Vengevine here. Pass that over so we can get the Bloodghast back next turn, and then, as I say, play Carrion Feeder and Neonate to get back Vengevine. So here comes Bloodghast. Off the land, Carrion Feeder into Neonate, which, as playing our second creature, brings back the Vengevine. And get to attack for 4 here. Our opponent missed their land drop and just played a second Vial, which doesn't really bode particularly well for them. We've also got now 8 power on turn 2 on the board, which is pretty nice. As I say, not as crazy as this deck can get, but gotta say that's still pretty good. Gonna Faithless Looting. We had a few options here. We could have just played the altar and started pitching Bloodghast, which obviously we can just buy back and just fill up our graveyard. But I think Faithless Looting seemed like the better option here to see if we can hit something. So we find Hogaak, which I'm going to run out here by tapping our creatures and emptying our graveyard. I'm not sure if this is the best play necessarily. I wanted Hogaak on the board, but it does cost us quite a lot in terms of resources. We have to pitch all these Faithless Lootings in our graveyard, but I think potentially it's worth it. We could have tapped the Vengevine as well, but I wanted to get in for 4 here. So hit for 4. I'm going to sack the Bloodghast to the Carrion Feeder because we're going to play land here, and we might as well get that value. So play the Blood Crypt, get back the Bloodghast, and we can run out the altar here as well. We could try and go a bit crazy with altar here, but I don't think it's necessary at this very moment in time. Sacking Hogaak to altar is pretty powerful. You can mill a lot of cards into your graveyard, but I don't think that's necessarily what we want to be doing here. So the opponent has Cloud Shredder Slither and a Siphon Slither to go along with their Predatory Slither, so they managed to hit us for 7, gain 7 life, which is a pretty good life swing. It's not good enough for us not to be able to kill them next turn though. We still have 17 points of damage on board, and given our opponent hasn't played a removal spell yet, I kind of figured they didn't have one. So I've gone for the attack here. There were other options, I suppose, here that were available to us. As I say, we could have started milling ourselves with Altar of Dementia and Hogaak, and that could have potentially got us even more power onto the board. We could have found more Bloodghasts, more Vengevines, Grave Crawlers that we could have then cast thanks to Carrion Feeder being in play, and then yeah, I think that would have been another route to victory, but as it was, we were able to just attack and kill our opponent on turn 4, which worked out pretty nicely. Okay, so here we are with the sideboard options. This is the list as I've been playing it. There are a few options of ways to build this. I was initially smashing green for Nature's Claim, but Wisp Mare seems to be the more popular option as it interacts with Bridge from Below, but it doesn't destroy artifacts, so you still have to play something else. So you've got Shenanigans here, and we've got Wear Tear, which can hit both. So yeah, this is our sideboard against Slivers. I guess there's not a ton we want to change. We potentially bring in some of our removal here. Dark Blast is potentially good as long as they don't have one of the pump Slivers. Fatal Push can answer a Slither as well, and then we've got Lightning Axe. So those are the main cards we're potentially thinking about bringing in. Leyline of Void in the main can be cut for sure, so probably going to bring in some removal for that. And then you can tweak some of the numbers. Not entirely sure what the best cards to cut are. Generally I'm looking at cutting one Neonate and a Gravecrawler potentially. I think you want all your bridges most of the time. You can cut Vengevine as well, particularly if you're cutting down on your 1-drops. Then cutting on a Vengevine or 2 is not terrible. And Altar is another card that you can probably cut down 1 or 2 of potentially. But you don't want to go too far with cutting any of these cards because they're all very good. And sometimes the interaction isn't all that important for our deck. So those are the cards I'm looking at in terms of sideboarding. Okay, so here we are with game 2. This is our opening hand. Yeah, not bad, to be honest. We've got 2 copies of Hogaak, which is one too many, but that's fine. We've got Faithless Looting to dig into our second land. We've got Bloodghast, which is a nice card to pitch. And we've got Altar as well, which is generally a late game card as far as my experience has gone. I say late game, I suppose you kind of want to be casting it around turn 3 generally. Once you've got some creatures on the board that are actually worth sacrificing. So we are going to Faithless Looting here. Our opponent just plays Bloodstained Mire and passes a turn. We found Bridge from Below, which is very nice. That's certainly a card we want to put in our graveyard. Works very nice with Altar as well. And second Altar, not so exciting. So we're going to pitch Bloodghast and Bridge from Below. Pass the turn back. Opponent is presumably going to play a 2-drop Slither, as they are wont to do. So that's a Sinew Slither, which is fine. We are going to Faithless Looting again here and just pitch the 2 Altar of Dementia. I could have played Altar of Dementia instead, so that was really the decision here, was whether we want to play Altar or just loot. I decided to go for the looting. The alternative is to play a land, get back Bloodghast, play Altar of Dementia, and then we can just sack the Bloodghast and mill ourselves if we want to. I thought Faithless Looting was more likely to find us something useful. Really what I was looking for was a 1-drop. Stitches Supply would probably be the best card, but as it turns out, we don't get there. We end up drawing slightly too many Altars and just pass the turn. I don't think any of this is devastating. I think next turn we can play this Altar and it'll be pretty good. And we should be able to play Hogaak off of that. So I think that works quite nicely. We can Altar, sack the Bloodghast, play a land, get that Bloodghast, and then Hogaak. From there, getting a token off the Bridge from Below, so we got 2 black creatures to cast the Hogaak. So that's precisely what we're going to do here. So Altar, sacrifice Bloodghast, that triggers Bridge from Below, gets us a zombie. We don't really hit anything exciting off the mill. Gonna play Bloodstained Mire, then use these 2 creatures to cast Hogaak. Mill ourselves again, nothing too exciting. Gonna sacrifice Hogaak, which obviously gets us to mill 8 cards into the graveyard, which is pretty spicy. I think I play this wrong here, but I go for the casting the Gravecrawler so we can get this Vengevine out of our graveyard, but actually we aren't really nearly done with the Hogaak milling that we could be doing, so I actually think we should have held off on that. And maybe use that mana for something else. So again, another mill. We find another couple of bridges. So now we're in a pretty sweet spot. And this is kind of the combo aspect of this deck. So you can actually kill people by milling them. So now we have all 4 of our bridges in the graveyard. We're able to recast Hogaak fairly easily. Every time we sacrifice a creature, we are getting 4 more zombie tokens, which is pretty powerful, and it means that we can recast Hogaak fairly easily. It's not like an infinite loop. We're not generating more zombies than we are the cost of Hogaak, but it's pretty close. So it's not infinite, but it doesn't actually need to be. So we're going to mill ourselves down. We now have 8 cards in our library. I suppose we could go down to 0, but I'm going to stop milling ourselves at this point, because we've got a very good amount of value out of that from here. So we can bring back Hogaak again, and now we can start looking at milling our opponent. Oh, we might have started milling our opponent a little bit earlier. So we're going to start by sacrificing some of these zombie tokens. I mean, I suppose it doesn't really matter what order we do this in. The fact is that there's a good chance we could have just won anyway by attacking, but there is the risk that our opponent has the Cloud Shredder Sliver in hand, which would then give their Slivers flying and haste, and just be able to fly over and kill us, potentially. They need a little bit more than that. I suppose they need a Pump Sliver as well, possibly. Let me see, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think they're one-off killing us, so if they could play 2 Slivers, one of which was a Cloud Shredder Sliver, they could kill us. So this isn't unnecessary. This could potentially be our opponent be able to kill us next turn. Obviously we'll kill them on the crackback in this situation if they weren't able to do anything, and we have tons of blockers if they aren't able to give their guys evasion of any kind. But yeah, so here we are. Our opponent's now down to 20 after we sacrifice all the zombies that we had. Then we're able to cast Hogaak again, sack the zombies, sack Hogaak, and now our opponent's got 0 cards in play, in their library, sorry. Just going to cast Hogaak here. Not that it really matters. Our opponent is dead on their draw, and yeah, that is the game. So we actually milled our opponent out on turn 3 there, which is kind of insight into the degenerate nature of this deck, and it's fairly hilarious, but also pretty broken. So yeah, not only did we have a ridiculous amount of power on the board, but we also were actually just able to like mill kill our opponent. So yeah, Altar plus Hogaak plus Bridge from Below is a fairly insane little combo that can fairly easily mill out an opponent. Our opponent had 50 cards in their library, and we managed to get rid of those without much problem. We still have 7 zombies on the board, plus a Hogaak. We never actually bothered to sacrifice our existing creatures as well, so we could have got even more zombies and power on the board. So I mean, I don't know exactly the number of cards we could have milled out of our opponent's library, but it's obviously a very, very high number, and yeah, more than enough to win this matchup. So yeah, this probably wasn't the most competitive of matchups to show you, but it was just kind of a general illustration of the power of the deck, and also some of the interactions that take a bit of time to learn. To be honest, this is like my first time actually milling an opponent out since starting playing the deck, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. Not necessarily thoroughly intuitive, but once you understand what's going on, you can see the ways to get there and get the win this way. So this was a mill kill on turn 3.